It's time for ROTD Weekend. Well, all the kids are back to school now, and with that, I realized that we have a new batch of empty nesters. And, I'm not one yet. My son, my oldest, is applying to college this year, so he'll be going next year. But I feel like I've been an empty nester or a semi-empty nester for a really long time. I mean, my kids go back to their dads every second week, and so then I am empty nested. And nowadays, like when they're here, we spend a lot of time together, but they also are really busy. They're both on drumline. My son drives. They head out. They go out for dinner. They go to friends' houses. The friends come here sometimes. It's kind of insanity. It is different every day. But yeah, and some of those days are quieter, What did I call myself a minute ago? A semi-empty nester? I think I need a better term for this. It's like people who have older children who have not moved out yet, but are gone a lot of the time. And it's like influx, I don't have a name for it. If you have a name for it, send me an email. Maybe you have a great idea. Email me at christine@cookthestory.com and tell me if you have a name for, adults who are in transition with their grown-up kids, kind of living at home, but kind of away a lot. It definitely poses a unique set of challenges with a unique set of solutions. So I'm going to tell you about a solution or just a thing that happened this past week, which may help you if ever you're in this situation. So I'm going to say this was not pre-planned in any serious way, but I wish it had been because it's kind of brilliant. So what happened was my kids were not with me this weekend, and Marty and I had a party for our improv group. You guys know we're doing all these improv classes. We're on level 3 now. We love our improv friends. They become like a little family. It's really nice. So we had a group of them over on Sunday to do improv and eat and sing and hang out. It was a blast. So that was last weekend, Labor Day long weekend. And I did some grilled chicken, and I do this thing, I know I've told you about it before, with drumsticks that I pre-cook low and slow in the oven and then put sauce on them and put them in the fridge. And then they go onto the grill just to heat through. I also made a loaded potato salad. That's the potato salad that has sour cream, cheddar cheese, green onions. It can have bacon, but I tend to not do bacon when it's a larger group so that I could accommodate vegetarians or anybody who doesn't eat pork. So that salad was there. And then I did an Italian pasta salad, the one that has all the flavors and ingredients of the Olive Garden salad, but with pasta, cold pasta mixed in. And then I used the Olive Garden salad dressing that you can get at the grocery store. So we did that salad, and then also a big, kind of like a Texas salad. I don't know what you call this. It's a mixture of kidney beans and corn, bell peppers, tomatoes, green onions. I think there was also jalapeno slices in there. And I served that in a big bowl with some romaine lettuce chopped up on the side, and then some cheese and taco chips on the side too. So people can decide if they just want to put like a scoop of the beans on their plate or if they want to turn it into more like a tossed salad. So we had a great meal. Oh, and our friend Jacob brought a baked macaroni and cheese that was delicious also. So we had lots of food, and it was great. It was easy for me to prep because the food that I was making was all like the cold salads, 3 of them, which I just make up and put in the fridge and then just pull out when we're ready to serve. So I'm not like fussing in the kitchen when people are there. And then the chicken was already pre-cooked, and I just had to put it on the grill just to heat through. So all that was very easy for the party. I loved that. People brought lots of like chips and dips and cheese and veggies and things to snack on. There was fruit on skewers. So there was lots of food. That was great. And then after dinner, we put the salads and the chicken away. I had chicken that I had not put on the grill because I didn't think I needed all of it. So that was ready in the fridge to go on the grill or heat up another day. And then the baked potato salad and the Texas salad and the pasta salad and the mac and cheese were all in the fridge. So I'll just say, like, a side point, if you're doing any tailgating or anything like that this fall, all those recipes are amazing, and I will link to them in the show notes. But how this helped for like my transitional phase here is that we had all those salads and that chicken for a party, and then it was all in the fridge. And then in the days ahead, when my kids were back, that formed the basis for our dinners. And it wasn't even leftovers to them. They're just like, oh yeah, potato salad. You know what I mean? So it worked out really, really well that we had this like party food one day, easy cold salads, and then those worked as side dishes for the couple of days after when our house got fuller again. I think at at this point here, I'm not exactly saying that this is a strategy or a tip or hack or anything like that. I'm saying that how I make things to have leftovers and when the leftovers are going to be there is shifting, and I'm paying attention, and those patterns are going to emerge. You know what I mean? And I'm on the lookout for them. If you have thoughts on that, again, you can email me, Christine@cookthestory.com. I'd love to hear from you. So another theme of this time of year, this nearing actual fall, but it feels like fall and the kids are back to school and there's tailgating. There is also wonderful harvesting going on, and my guest today knows all about it. I am talking about canning tomatoes, fresh from the garden, canned tomatoes, with our own favorite gardening expert, Kathy Berget from Beyond the Chicken Coop. You might remember that I had Kathy on as a guest not that long ago, and she mentioned how canning techniques have changed in recent years. So the things we grew up seeing our moms and grandmothers do may not be what we should be doing today. And so she is here to give us some of that advice and resources specifically for when it comes to canning tomatoes. Let's hear from Kathy from Beyond the Chicken Coop. Hello, Kathy. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, I'm so excited to be back.
I am excited to have you. We are talking about what we promised. You and I agreed to do this, and I'm very excited. So you're telling us today, it's not a secret. It's not a secret recipe of the day. You're telling us how to can tomatoes because it is tomato season. We're in early September. Is that, I live in Florida. I have no idea when anything grows anywhere else anymore because it's just everything doesn't do well in the hot sun a lot here. But yeah, so where you are, is it tomato season, beginning of September?
Well, yes, it really starts. Our tomatoes come on in August, but goes all the way through September until we get a frost. I'm in the northern part of the country, and so it's a little bit slower than a lot of areas, but tomato season is as long as you have tomatoes on. So for me, it is prime tomato season right now.
And you're in Idaho?
I am in the very northern part of Idaho.
Nice. I just wanted to clarify because I have Canadian listeners too, and you say northern part of the country, and they're like, there are no tomatoes up there.
That's the northern part. Yep. That would be a little cold.
That's hilarious. I don't know that for sure, actually. Now I'm wondering. I've spent time in Iqaluit, Nunavut, way up north, and I don't know if they can grow tomatoes there. If anybody listens from up there, you need to let me know because I do not know. Okay, so there are tomatoes now, and would you start canning like right as the season's starting, or do you wait until you have a lot, or like what's the first thought in that part?
For us, when tomatoes come on, it's just about eating them. There's nothing better than a fresh vine-picked, super ripe tomato. And so I just love to eat them whole or in quick little salads, or probably one of our favorites is making BLTs, bacon, lettuce, and tomato. And that tomato is just so yummy on there. Then all of a sudden there seems to be this tipping point where we can't eat enough fresh. And you just have all these tomatoes. And that's when the canning starts to come in for me. And we plant a lot of tomato plants with the kind of thinking ahead that we are going to be canning some tomatoes. And we do different things. We can just basic tomatoes. We make some sauce. Sometimes I make spaghetti sauce. So all sorts of things. Today, we're just going to talk about canned tomatoes.
Wait. I want to know, you said you plant a lot of tomato plants. What is a lot?
Well, I guess I shouldn't say it's a lot because some people are going to say it is, and some people are going to say, well, that's nothing. So right now it's just my husband and I at home. So for us, it's more than we can possibly eat. I think we probably have 15 tomato plants this year.
Okay. And how many tomatoes does each plant yield on average?
I have no idea. So we have a variety of tomatoes. So cherry tomatoes and then like Romas. We have some, I don't even know all the names, some older heirloom tomatoes that are funny shaped that are these beautiful colors on the inside. And then some beautiful round, just perfectly round tomatoes. I honestly don't know the varieties of most of those tomatoes. I have no idea what we get off of those. I couldn't even venture a guess.
Okay, so you have lots of tomatoes, too many. You cannot eat them all for sure. And you're going to start canning. What is the first thing that you do?
Well, once I'm ready to start canning, I want to back up just a tad though,
Yeah.
because the last time that we talked about canning tomatoes, we talked about how canning practices and procedures have changed over the years.
Yes.
And I think that's really important for a lot of people to know. And so I really look at what the sites that I know are probably I would consider best practices today. And so one is the National Center for Home Food Preservation, and they are based out of the University of Georgia, and everything that they put out there is based on science-based information. So they do all sorts of tests to see what are the best practices that will result in the safest conditions for home canners. And then any other university that has a canning program, I will often refer to those. The Ball Canning, like the company that makes the ball jars, has a website. They put out information based on the National Center for Home Food Preservation, and they have cookbooks as well. And then I think in Canada, from my understanding, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this, the Bernardin. Have you heard of that website before?
No, I don't think so.
They're, I think, the equivalent of Ball in the States and in Canada. And my understanding is they also put out recipes and best practices based on all of these scientific tests. I think that's really important to mention because there are a lot of people, and myself included, we learn from our grandparents or from our parents or from somebody that just told us how to do something. And while that may work, there could be a chance that it doesn't work. And the problem with possibly using a recipe or a procedure practice that's not the best practice is you could possibly have contaminated food or food that goes bad. You could suffer a foodborne illness. And the worst of that would be botulism, which would be paralysis or death. That's the negativity. The bad part about canning is that is a realization that that could possibly happen when you are canning. Now, a lot of people don't follow those procedures, and that's fine for them. But whatever I'm going to do, and especially sharing a recipe for other people to follow, I'm always going to base it back on what are the scientific proven methods. And those are going to continue to change as they test more, learn more, and as things evolve. So if, people can decide what method they want to use, but I'm going to share methods based on these practices.
Wait, Kathy, can you remind me of what it was that people used to do that we now have evidence is not safe? Just so people who aren't like super aware, in case they are doing it and didn't know.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot. And even last summer, I took a certification course on home canning through our a couple of the Idaho universities. It was an online course. There were new things that I was learning. So it's always going to be changing. But just in the example of canning tomatoes, so I don't know when this was added or when it was discovered or made the change, but we need to acidify our tomatoes before we can water bath can them. And that means either adding lemon juice or citric acid to make sure that that pH level in the tomatoes is at a safe level so that we can water bath can the tomatoes.
Oh, so I'm guessing that it was thought that tomatoes had enough acidity on their own, perhaps.
So some tomatoes do, and that's part of the issue is tomatoes. So in order to water bath can, we need to have a pH level of 4.6 or lower. And then it's safe to water bath can. Otherwise, it needs to be pressure canned. Okay. Tomatoes kind of fall right around that 4.0 to 4.5 range, but some tomatoes can go 4.6, 4.7, and you don't know. And it could be depending on your soil, depending on the variety, depending on when the plant is ripening. And so there's too many variables there. And in order to take that off the table, lemon juice has been added or the citric acid.
And so you add it no matter what. You don't do like a pH test or anything. You are just adding in some of the acidity.
I add it no matter what.
Okay.
I've never looked into pH testing the tomatoes, and I don't know how reliable those are. I don't know anything about it. I just always add the lemon juice. And what's funny too is it has to be bottled lemon juice, not fresh lemon juice, because lemons vary in their acidity level and their pH level. So I just always add it. You cannot taste it. I cannot detect the taste of the lemon juice in my canned tomatoes.
Oh, so it's a small amount.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the biggest change in the more recent years. Okay,
I
so
think I think another big change would be we have to adjust the amount of time that we boil something for water bath canning based on our elevation. The higher you are in elevation, the boiling level is lower, and so it takes longer to reach a safe temperature, and so that also has been adjusted
oh,
on there.
interesting. Yes. Okay. So yeah, so those are two important things, especially depending on where you live.
You're right. Yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So you have tomatoes. What
Mhm.
what do you do?
Okay. So when we're going to can, it's important to get everything out and ready first. And so you're going to want your jars. You can use pint-sized jars or quart-sized jars. Canning jar, you want to make sure that they're canning jars approved for canning. They can be older jars. That's not a problem at all. Or you can buy new jars. Just make certain that they are free of like any sort of nicks or chips or cracks. And so we get those washed up. We want to make sure you have new lids, the canning lids on there and the rings for it. You'll need a large pot. You can use a canning pot. It just needs to be large enough to hold your jars and have at least 2 inches of water over the top. And the water needs to be boiling, so you need enough room above that 2 inches so the water's not just going to boil over.
Right.
So have everything ready. Have everything out that you're going to need. I will start by washing my tomatoes. I just rinse them off in water, and we're going to blanch them to remove the peel. So I have a pot of boiling water ready for that, a bowl of ice water ready, and I just do them in batches and dip them into that hot boiling water, usually for 1 to 2 minutes, and then into the cold water, and then I just peel off those skins. If
Do
the
you-
skin doesn't, go ahead.
Oh no, do you have to cut a little cross on one end of the tomato before you put it in the boiling water?
You can. I usually don't, and I think that's just a matter of time. But sometimes if my tomatoes aren't peeling easily, I pop them back in, and that little X on the bottom might make that so I don't have to do that. So
Okay.
maybe I should actually try that and make sure. So you just want to get those skins off. The blanching and then in the cold water, it just helps them slip right off. And so we take all those off. I take the core out, just use a little paring knife and cut that core out. And then depending on the size of the tomatoes, I usually cut them into quarters or eight. You can decide what size you want them. You can dice them. You could leave them whole if you wanted. I find fewer fit in the jars, and sometimes they're hard to get in the jars. It really is what system works for you. And I always think about, how am I going to use these canned tomatoes? For me, it's usually diced or quartered that are going to go into a recipe, and they're going to get pureed up or broken down further, or they're just perfect that way they are.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, and when you have, even when you buy canned whole tomatoes, you often have to I take a pair of clean kitchen shears and put it in the can and chop up inside of the can because they're never the right size. So why would you put the whole tomatoes in there if they're going to take up more room and you're never going to use them whole?
Right. I'm the same way. So
Yeah.
I usually break them down. And again, depending on the size of the tomatoes. One thing before you even pick your tomatoes for the can, forgot to mention this part, is the tomatoes that you're using for canning should be, no mold on them, no blemishes on them. I mean, a little mark on the tomato is fine, but you want to have really nice looking tomatoes and no visible issues with the tomatoes. And the tomatoes should be picked from vines that are not dead or dying. So sometimes all of a sudden a vine outside will start to wither away, but the tomatoes are still really good. Those tomatoes are good for eating or for freezing, but the acidity level on those tomatoes typically drops, and so they're not good for canning.
Oh, interesting.
The same thing if your tomatoes freeze or frost, you don't want to use those tomatoes for canning. Freeze them, use them for something else.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, because it would it changes the acidity level in the tomatoes. They're getting sweeter, right? Because the concentration of the nutrients.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's similar to the way they make ice wine in Canada, is when there's a frost and then the juices concentrate, or the water freezes. Somebody's going to correct me, I'm sure, but the water freezes in the grapes, and then that reduces it somehow. And then when they crush the grapes, they get more sweetness from them.
I bet you're right.
Yeah, it's something like that. That's very cool.
Yeah, I agree. back to the canning. Once I have my tomatoes already, and the amount of tomatoes you're going to use, if you wanted about 8 quarts of tomatoes, you're going to plan on 2 to 3 pounds of tomatoes per quart. And that varies again, depending on how much you're going to fit in your jars. So the smaller the tomato that you're chopping is, you're going to get more in there. Mm-hmm. But that's just a rule of thumb. You can just 1 or 2 quarts if you want to. You're just spending as much energy and, with the whole process, getting everything out, boiling everything, then if you did 8 quarts. But if you only have a few at a time and want to can them, you can do 1 or 2 jars at a time, and that's totally fine.
Okay, that's good to know. But I know exactly what you mean. There's these tasks that you're filling a pot with all this water and waiting for it to come to a boil. In this case, 2 pots, because you're boiling the tomatoes to get the peel off and you're boiling the water for the jars. That's just an insane amount of time waiting for water to boil.
Right. That's a lot of work. And then you've got all that cleaning to do afterwards, because no matter what, I tend to get stuff everywhere. So after you have your tomatoes all ready, I then start assembling my jars. And the process that I use is for each quart, I put 2 tablespoons of bottled lemon juice in each jar first. Then if you're wanting to add salt, you're going to add salt. Salt is totally optional. And I'm probably half the time don't add salt. I'd rather add it once I'm cooking, but a lot of people like to have their tomatoes already salted in there. If you're adding salt, you want to use canning salt, not just a regular table salt. Table salt has an additive and it'll make your liquid in your jars a little bit cloudy. It's not going to make it bad, but it's not as nice looking.
Okay, interesting.
And so we add the lemon juice. If you're using salt, you're going to put it in, and then you just fill your jars up with those tomatoes. And I just use my hands and I put them in there and get them all in the jars. And we need to think about leaving enough space at the top so that there's a 1/2 inch of headspace. And headspace is from the top of your contents in your jar to the top of the jar. Okay. We're going to need a 1/2 inch. And then I add boiling water. I just pour boiling water right out of my tea kettle or out of the pot into that jar, leaving that 1/2 inch headspace.
Okay.
And so I do that with my jars, and then I remove any bubbles that are in the jar. And I first just take the jar and I just very lightly tap it on the counter. It helps wiggle some of those tomatoes around. I use a tool, it's called a debubbler. It's like a thin plastic wand. You can use like a silicone spatula or even a plastic like picnic knife and just rub it around the inside of the jar, just kind of make a circular motion. That removes any of the bubbles that may be in there. And you just do that very quickly. And then you wipe off the rim of your jar, put the lid on, and then put your ring on to hold that ring in place, or to hold the lid in place on the jar.
I'm going to back up, Kathy, and I'm sure everybody knows this, but I just want to make sure. The air bubbles is because we can't have air in the jar because that will contaminate, right?
So the whole process of canning, and you're exactly right. Yes. The whole process of canning is heating our food to a temperature to kill any bacteria in there. And the process also pushes all of the air out of the jar, and then that helps seal the jar. And so you'll have a headspace at the top of your jar. It looks clear, but it's not air that's in there. That's been removed. So if we have big air pockets in there, that can stay in there, and that can cause your food to break down, because air or oxygen in food can cause bacteria to grow.
Right. Okay. No, that's fascinating, actually. Yes. I haven't thought of that. The clear spot at the top of the jar is vacuumed of air. It's like a little vacuum space, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Fascinating. Okay, so you were putting the lids on, and then what?
Yeah, so when you put that ring on, you just finger tighten. You don't have to use like your big muscles to, tighten it so that it's never going to come off. You just finger tighten it. It goes into your water bath canner. And before I even get started on my tomatoes, I have that water bath canner ready. I have it about half filled with water, and I have that water so that it's simmering, so it's already getting warm. So I add my jars into it, put them in there. I don't want to have cold water in there, because now that I put boiling water in my jars, I don't want to have a big temperature fluctuation between the jars and the water. So I put those all in there, and then I add more water to my canner so that I have at least 2 inches of water over the top of those jars.
Would the jars break, Kathy, if they were in the hot water inside of them and cold water outside?
They could.
Even these sturdy canning jars, it could happen. Wow. Okay. Good to know.
Yep. They sure can. And there's nothing worse. I mean, then your whole jar is ruined and gone. And it happens. And sometimes the jars crack or break with doing everything right. It just could be that there may be a flaw in the jar and we don't know about it. So our jars are in there. We put the lid on the canner, turn it up to high, and bring it to a full rolling boil. And then once it starts to boil, you can turn the temperature down so it stays at a boil. We want to keep that lid on there and we can check it and look at it. And you're going to boil the hot water bath process. For quarts, you're going to do 45 minutes. And if you were doing pint-sized jars, it's going to be 40 minutes. But this is where you're going to add additional time depending on your elevation. Oh. So I'm right at about 2,000 feet. And so I have to add 5 minutes of processing time. So for my quart-sized jar, instead of the 45 minutes, I'm going to add 5 minutes, and now I'm going to be doing it for 50 minutes.
Oh, interesting. Now, maybe you're about to tell me this, but you had the 2 inches of water over the cans. Is that enough that it doesn't boil down too far away with the lid on, or do you have to add water at some point?
You do not have to add water at any point. You have that lid on. There shouldn't be a lot of evaporation. I've never had that an issue where I've had to add more water. And if you did, unless you were to add boiling water, it will lower your temperature down and you'd have to probably start your processing time again.
Right. Okay, so that's partly why the lid is on, I'm guessing, and why you have the 2 inches. So there's just for sure not going to be needed more water.
Yeah. So if you're below 1,000 feet in elevation, you do not have to adjust your time for this. Every single time that I can, I pull out my recipes or I pull out the books that I'm using because there's so many details in here. Don't feel like you have to have this all in your head. In fact, you don't want to rely on your memory, or at least my memory, for all these little details, because that can make a difference whether you have a safe product or not. So everything on my recipes, everything on those sites that I mentioned, all have the correct processing times, how to adjust for your elevation or anything else that you need. So I'm always referring to those.
That's really, really great advice. And like reminder to everyone, you're not failing if you need to look something up. You're just being safe and careful.
Right. Yeah. Once your processing time is done, you turn the stove off, and then I take the lid off, but you leave your jars in that hot water for at least 5 minutes.
Okay.
And that prevents what we call siphoning. And siphoning is if you pull that jar out right away, you're going into a cold environment. Probably isn't going to cause your jar to crack like putting it into the cold water, but everything in there is boiling hot. And that temperature change can cause the liquid to be forced out of that jar, and it comes kind of spewing down the sides. And so keeping it in, turning that burner off, taking the lid off the pot and letting it sit there for about 5 minutes helps prevent some of the siphoning. Sometimes it still happens a little bit, but I have found that most of the time it prevents any siphoning at all.
Okay, that's good to know. Could you leave it for longer just to be extra careful, or it's not necessary?
You sure could. Yeah. If you wanted to leave it in there for 10 minutes, not a problem. I use a jar lifter. In fact, I don't know how you could can without a jar lifter. It looks like a funny tong, but it goes around the mouth of the jar, the lid area, right on the can, and you can safely lift those jars out of the boiling water, your hot water, and you lift them straight out, and you put it on a rack, just like a cooling rack that I like cool my cookies on. And I put it on that and take all of my jars out, and I just set them on there, and I don't do anything to the jars. I don't tighten the rings. The rings are going to be really loose because of that hot water in there, but you don't do anything with them, and you don't touch the top of the lid. And if you do, you could cause what's called a false seal. And so naturally what you want to have happen is those jars come out, you set them on the rack, you'll start to hear this popping sound, this pop, pop, or a little ping. I'm probably not very good at imitating the sound. And it's the happiest sound of canning because it's telling you that your jars are sealing.
Right. Yes. So they're indenting downwards.
Yes. Now, sometimes you won't hear that little pop. And so don't be concerned if you don't hear it. And you're not going to worry about anything about these jars until they're completely cool. And that takes 10 to 12 hours. Oh. And so you just have to let them sit there. Don't touch them. And after that time, you can go in to see if your jar is sealed.
Can I ask about the false seal? So if you touch the top, what's happened is you're causing it to indent as opposed to it being sucked in?
Correct.
Oh, and then it's not sealed because it didn't happen in its vacuum way. It happened unnaturally.
Right. And if it was already going to seal, you're probably going to be okay.
Okay.
But the word vacuum there, I think, is the crucial part. It's that has to happen there. Some people I've even seen in some Facebook canning forums where they've asked, were they hot canning with hot contents in their jars? They put the lid on, they put their ring on, and their lid seems to do that vacuum seal right away and go pop. And they wonder if that means they don't have to water bath or process their jars. And no, that doesn't, because you have not raised the temperature of your contents in your jars to that safe level for an extended period of time to kill the bacteria. That lid could possibly look like it's sealed just right away, but we're not looking for it until after we've done our full processing time and then let them cool fully.
So if it does happen at the beginning, Kathy, do you take that lid off and use a different one?
Nope.
Oh, it's fine if it happens.
Yep.
It just doesn't mean that you're safe. You still have to process. That's the idea.
Right.
Okay, got
Yes.
it. Got it. Okay, so now you're ready to test them 10 or 12 hours later.
Yep. So what I do is I take all the rings off, and probably I first do a visual look at them. You can tell if that lid has kind of that little downward depression from the vacuum seal. And then I touch each jar. If there is an up and down movement at all, that jar is not sealed. Even if you push it down and all of a sudden it looks like it's sealed, but you know that you pushed it and it went down, again, that jar is not sealed. So those jars, you have two choices if something didn't seal. You can put them in your refrigerator and use them right away. Or you could, if you were doing another batch of tomatoes, you could reprocess those jars in the same manner if you were doing this within 24 hours.
Okay.
Sometimes the jars won't seal depending on maybe your jar has a little nick on it. Maybe the lid is just not a good quality lid, or there might be some food that you just didn't wipe off on the rim. There can be a variety of reasons, but it doesn't happen a ton in my experience that the jars don't seal. I take the rings off and I lift just very gently on the lid, not enough to try to remove the lid, but if it's just kind of stuck on there, it's going to come off really easily. Just, I'm not applying any force at all, but I just want to see, is that lid really on there? And that tells me that my jars are sealed.
Oh, that's great. Okay. So then you put the rings back on, I assume?
I actually don't. So I do wash off all my jars. I find sometimes, because when through the process of the water bath canning, sometimes food or the liquid is pushed out through the jars just a little bit, and they get residue on those jars. They get a little sticky. So I give them a good, just quick bath in the sink, wash them off with some soapy water, rinse them, set them, dry them. I do not reapply the ring, and that's really a personal preference. And the reason I don't apply the ring, I think there's a couple of reasons. One is I just use those rings another time for another canning batch. But the main reason is when your jars are being stored, if there's something not right with a jar, maybe there's some bacteria that didn't get out, or maybe something else happened in there and things start to grow, it can push the lid off of your jar, which the contents in there are not good. You do not want to eat that, but it tells me right away that my jar is bad. If I have the ring on there, it's going to hold that lid on in place, and I might not be able to tell right away just by looking at it.
Oh, interesting.
I have found it's a personal preference, though. I've had people tell me both ways. Some people like the way they look in there. If you're giving them as gifts, you can put a cute little, piece of fabric underneath there, under the ring, and put it on. It's okay to leave them on. Anytime before you open a jar, you're always going to do a visual inspection of it and make sure there's nothing wrong with the contents in there. You're looking for any cloudiness, any bubbles, any mold, anything that just doesn't look right. You're like, what is that? That's when you're going to just discard it, and you don't want to try it.
Okay. Don't take any chances here.
Don't take any chances.
And it shouldn't smell at all either. It should just smell like tomato.
Yeah. So anything that makes you just go, if you have any question marks when you're opening it, I would not eat it. If it looks like it went in and it smells like when you first put it in the jars, it's going to be fine. If there's anything that just seems a little off about it, that's when you want to just don't take the chance of it being bad.
No, that makes perfect sense. And then you have these beautiful tomatoes. How long do they keep in the jars for?
Yeah. So National Center for Home Food Preservation recommends that it's consumed within 1 year, but that's really for like the best quality. It typically won't go bad if you have it longer than that, but the color may start to fade a bit, or the tomato taste might not be as strong. But I usually try to eat them up within a year.
Okay. And your favorite things to use them for?
Ooh. I think probably in chili.
Oh.
I love to make huge pots of chili in the wintertime, and I will add, depending on how many people are coming over, I'll add 3 or 4 quart-sized jars of the tomatoes, liquid and all, into that pot of chili. And there's just something about growing the tomatoes, processing the tomatoes, and then using the tomatoes that is such a satisfying feeling.
Oh, I can believe it. That sounds amazing. I mean, I remember when I lived further north and understood the growing seasons more than I do here, just having the vegetables from the garden and, having planted everything and growing it and then cooking with it and eating it. That felt satisfying. You've taken this to like a whole other level where you're getting to reap the benefits of your garden all year long, which is just amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's probably the most rewarding part for us. Like, I love eating everything right now fresh out of the garden, but I love then using it the rest of the year too.
Well, Kathy, do you have a recipe for chili on your website?
Ooh, I have a couple of different recipes for chili on my website. And I also have a recipe for canning chili on my website. Now that uses a pressure canner, but it's really good as well. But I can give you the link for my chili recipe that's just done on the stovetop that I'd love to share.
Yeah, no, I will link to all of that in the show notes. And why don't you tell everybody where they can find you if you want all Kathy's recipes are so beautiful, so much coming from the garden and so many great ideas. Kathy, where can they find you?
Yeah. So I also want to say, if people have any questions as they are canning anything, they can either comment on my website or send me an email. And I try to respond as much information I have. And I always go back to those resources that I mentioned before and try to cite all those sources. So if you have questions, especially if you're brand new at canning, don't hesitate to reach out. So my website is beyondthechickencoop.com. And if you wanted to email me, it's Kathy, Kathy, at beyondthechickencoop.com. And you can find me on Instagram or Facebook at Beyond the Chicken Coop.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kathy. This has been so informative, and I can't wait to give this a try and hear if anybody else does also. Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you. I hope it's been helpful for everybody.
I really do love food science. I hope you enjoyed that too. I learned so much. Thank you so much, Kathy, and everyone. Go and visit her website, beyondthechickencoop.com. Okay, so what have I got going on here? As you know, I have scaled back a little bit on the podcast and the websites, just doing a little bit less to make room for that new thing that we are launching soon, which is very related to what I was talking about at the top of the show. Definitely cooking for two, cooking for small households, tips for all of that kind of thing, and for transitional phases especially. We have all of that coming, which includes a lot of recipes. And so I have been working on some of these recipes that are for smaller households. And this week I am finishing off some pictures and videos for a chili recipe for two. You know, when you want that like big bowl of comforting food, but you don't want to make a big pot of it and you don't want to have to wait a long time for it to cook and you don't want all those leftovers. You just want a bowl of chili. That's what this recipe is, with maybe a little bit left over for a lunch for somebody the next day, but really not a big pot, So that's the chili for two, quick and easy to make, so delicious. And I'm also working on a smoked salmon salad. So I love this recipe because you can have packs of smoked salmon in the fridge. They keep for a long time. And then if you're not in the mood to cook anything, but you want a delicious dinner, you can pull this together really quickly. You just need some veggies chopped up, your lettuce, the smoked salmon from the packet. If you have hard-boiled eggs, you can use those. If not, you can do a little scrambled egg or a poached egg or a fried egg or skip the egg. There's a delicious lemon salad dressing on there. And yeah, it's just very easy to make, very quick. And I love it for like I don't feel like cooking. What should we have today kind of dinner. We do have it quite often, Marty and I, and so it was time that I do this as an actual recipe, you know? And then I'm also working on a recipe for the Cookful, so not for this whole Cook for Two venture, but for the Cookful, it is a meatloaf that uses both pork and beef, nice, big, hearty, kind of traditional meatloaf recipe. This is also kind of one of those things that I make all the time without a recipe. I'm just kind of like putting things in a bowl and putting it on a pan and cooking it. And I'm like, you know what? I should actually write this down one day. So I wrote it down one day and then I've tested it. And now we're doing the pictures and the video and one final test of that. That is happening this week. As to what is going live on the websites this week, we have on the Cookful something perfect for the season. It's a pumpkin spice butter, the butter that you mix up and then you can spread it on English muffins or toast or banana bread or anything to make it more delicious for the fall season. And on Cook the Story, we have, I've told you about this for sure already because I was telling you about it while I was developing it. It is a no-boil baked ziti. This is where you put the uncooked pasta in the big casserole dish with some liquid ingredients, some cheese, and then I like to use an already cooked sausage. Like you could go like with a kielbasa, or they make those they're like chicken sausages with Italian flavors. I think Aidel's is one of the brands, al fresco maybe, but they're sold already fully cooked. So all you have to do is like slice them up and mix them into this mixture, and then that's your protein. Or you can do some drained canned beans, but really you're just mixing everything in the casserole dish, covering it tightly and putting it in the oven and walking away. So it's just a really like low effort, easy meal that everybody loves because it is baked ziti after all. So that is going live on Cook the Story on Monday as well. So many new recipes to tell you about. Very exciting. I love watching these recipes kind of go from idea to end. I've always enjoyed that. And when I do this on the podcast and I'm telling you guys like, I've had this idea and we're working on it and now we're doing the pictures for it. And then finally it is actually coming out. It's really been fun to actually say out loud this whole process, Okay, so that is what is going on in my kitchen and on my websites this week. If you have not already subscribed to this podcast, make sure that you are subscribing now. Go and do it. All you need to do is go on your favorite podcast app on your phone and search for Recipe of the Day. And then you can tap on subscribe or follow and you will get all these new recipe ideas from me all the time. You can also go to cookthestory.com/ROTD and subscribe there. That is also where you go to get all the links that I've talked about in this show. If you want that potato salad recipe or any of the recipes that I've mentioned, you can go to cookthestory.com/ROTD. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is September 6th of 2025, and you click on there and you can see it all. I want to say a big thank you to Kathy Berget from BeyondTheChickenCoop.com. I learned so much. Thank you, Kathy. And thank you all for listening. I'm Christine Pittman from CookTheStory.com, TheCookful.com, the all-new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great weekend. Let's get cooking.